Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurs on Monocle Radio, a show all about inspiring people, innovative companies and fresh ideas in global business. On today's programme, we'll meet two founders driving cultural change through the power of music. First, we'll head to Havana to get tips on opening a neighbourhood hotel from a Grammy-winning producer.
Part of the building used to have a very famous jazz club. It's kind of a miracle that we're ended up restoring a building that was known for its musical destination.
And later, we'll meet the founder of a music platform tackling the challenges artists face in the streaming era.
We've seen artists do, you buy my album and you get a follow back on Twitter. 5 fans are going to get meet and greets on my tour. You get early access to tour tickets. And because the artist is in full control of their campaign, they can choose to reward fans wherever they are in the world.
This is The Entrepreneurs with me, Tom Edwards. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. We're starting out today's programme celebrating the release of a brand new edition of The Entrepreneurs, our yearly business special of Monocle magazine. Among the many inspirational stories in this year's issue is a guide on launching a neighbourhood hotel. Monocle's Tomos travelled to Havana to meet Grammy-winning music producer Andres Levine. A 20-year resident of the Cuban capital, Andres recently restored a grand 1930s hotel building with a rich musical pedigree in the Cayo district, a neighbourhood with character that is too often missed by Havana's million annual visitors. He explains how the Tribe Caribe Hotel was envisioned not only as a comfortable place to stay, but as a lively hub for the local community.
Havana, to me, not because I live here, is still probably one of the most interesting cities in the world. The sequence of political and social events in this island has a direct effect on, obviously, the people, but also the architecture. So, a very eclectic, beautiful, 100-year-old building that belonged to one family at one point ended up getting subdivided into 11 families and decayed over time. I mean, the elevator, which is rare enough to have a cage elevator in a building in this part of town, had been broken for 45 years. So, restoring the elevator symbolically is a way of kind of a metaphor of what I think we're doing. Yeah, there was several families, each with their own possibilities, but none with the possibility to restore to its original glory an incredible building like this one. So still connected to most of the families, as part of the building used to have a very famous jazz club called Bar Neptuno in the 40s, where Los Zafiros and Juan Formel used to jam. So it's kind of a bit of a miracle that we're ended up restoring a building that was musically known for its musical destination in the 40s and the 50s. The rest of the neighborhood, I mean, as you look out the windows, you could see that there were incredible palisades, and now they're divided into 10, 20, sometimes more apartments and houses with families, with a kind of very derelict reality. And for better or for worse, the revolution brought some good things and some bad things. So it's a very polarized conversation, which we're not going to have. But the only thing I can see of doing is to try to help the people first, and by creating a destination for the people that haven't been here to discover, and by coming, helping the reality in Havana.
And as I was discussing the day before we met, I think, for the first time, I stumbled in by mistake by hearing this lovely piano music seeping out onto the street. And then you were telling me about sort of a little bit about the pianist's story and her relationship to kind of music in Havana and this neighborhood and things. And it just felt like such a wonderful relationship to rekindle kind of via the prism of the hotel.
Yeah, we have this beautiful old vertical piano in the cafe. And, before trying to get one of my friends that I already know that plays piano, I basically asked around the neighborhood. And all of a sudden, there was like 10 people over 60 that work when they can as musicians at night in cabaret. So we have a kind of a rotating chair of local pianists that live a few blocks away. So they can make a little extra cash during the day before going to their night shop, if they have one. And the knowledge of piano, not only Cuban, but Mexican, Peruvian, British, even this particular woman that attracted enough to come into our cafe. I asked her to bring me a list of the songs she knew because I didn't want to have her play the typical Cubans, Bésame Mucho and this all day. She showed up with like a 6-page handwritten repertoire that had, 7 different countries in it. So I was like, wow. So I'm encouraging her to play the rarest of the music. That mixed into the street corner environment of the cafe in the center of Havana, I think creates a really interesting dynamic. With the same intention, in our gallery space, it's called the Black Box. I've started a bit of a talent show / competition project that was really inspired on something that I've been concerned about for many years here and been trying to support as much as I can, which is youth culture and their ability and opportunities that they may have in the music space. Add this to the fact that, the internet in Cuba has only really been an accessible tool for, if it's 10 years, I'm exaggerating. I mean, I started using WhatsApp here 7 years ago. And when I came here 20 years ago, I would have to go to a hotel business center to be able to send an email, which clearly is not an option for a lot of the locals. So that said, the increase of the bandwidth and availability to the internet has also increased the amount of information that gets shared globally with the young creative minds of Cuba. And I was seeing it happen, but the amount of new, interesting, alternative singer-songwriters, electronic musicians that have kind of developed in this last 3-4 years, especially because the talent is, in their early 20s or late teens sometimes, definitely they'll have a place to play or be heard, other than their Instagram accounts. So we created a bit of a contest in our Black Box, which is a black box, literally, the gallery space that holds maybe 100 people with good sound and good lighting to audition, and whoever would pass the audition would go into what we called season 1 of the Black Box, which started in November. And my intent was that with maybe me, and I have several friends that are judges, like well-known jazz and popular musicians of Cuba, I would like maybe pick one or record one song with the winner here in the studio, which is next door. But I was so surprised with the talent that we ended up doing an album with 8 of the winners. So this has now become the norm on season 2. And out of the 40 that applied, 20 made it to phase 1 and then competed in the contest. And out of those 20, 8 of the winners have just finished recording an album that will be out on Spotify, iTunes, all platforms in a few months. And the rule number 1 was obviously that it's original music. I'm really trying to push original content, innovative sound, and like a cover band wouldn't necessarily make it through the door, even if they were amazing. I did have a couple of amazing jazz quintets that came playing covers, which is what you do when you're a teenager and you have a jazz band. I said, try to compose something. And they came back a week later with 3 original songs that are now on a record. So if they're supported and stay focused, I think these will be world-class artists.
And I guess in a time where maybe it does feel that Havana as a city might have changed a little bit because of just such a huge departure of people, and people from the arts, like you were saying. I guess if you're the artists left behind, as if I can use that phrase, but if that can maybe also feel a little bit isolating for you. Do you have role models in the city anymore that you can sort of inspire you, can marshal the way forward for you as you're honing your craft? But also, I suppose, in a way, without romanticizing it too much, it does maybe give a little bit of an opportunity, a bit of space, if there are places like Black Box that you can actually, put what you've created to the test in front of an audience. And,
Yeah, I think what you're saying applies more if someone's following a certain style of music. But again, what surprised me and I like the most about this project is that I don't feel like anyone's really following something. I mean, the jazz and the funk, maybe a little bit more, but in the singer-songwriter side, they don't sound like anybody. They sound like themselves, which is, I think, probably the most important thing you can do as an artist. Have your own voice, your own style, and at a very young age, in a place like this, to be able to start to master that, I think is definitely commendable and worth looking at.
And to have, you and your friends, other kind of experienced musicians kind of opening the door. I mean, it's incredible, like, for them. Obviously, Havana over, decades or more is such a well-worn tourist or like visitor destination. Like you were sort of hinting at earlier, a lot of the sort of more famous hotels, I suppose, are sort of government-owned with the associations that sort of that brings to the more recent history. And, smaller sort of boutique hotels that have kind of opened up as well in the last few years. It feels like what the Tribe Caribe is pretty sort of singular in the sort of hotel destination kind of landscape that Havana's sort of famous for.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you did touch on this, but maybe just in a bit more detail, if you could explain why it's different, the kind of offering you have at the hotel, as a hotel. Also discussed, obviously, everything else that the hotel is doing. But, what makes it stand out, I suppose, kind of why it's important that it has its own character and its own personality. In what ways, I suppose?
For me, it's kind of an extension of the things I care about and my partner cares about. First of all, it's not like I'm a producer and then I have this hotel. It's like, like Robert De Niro has a restaurant. The hotel it's such a transparent extension of the cultural vision that is also in my music and what I gravitate to, what I develop, in that it's called the same. It's Tribe Caribe, Cayo, Hueso, which is the space. That added the other layers, like a look, kind of, lack of a better word, kind of a luxurious experience, in that it's in a funky neighborhood, but we've hosted people that, would consider this a 5-star experience. Now, when I say 5-star, I'm talking about the staff, the service, the quality of the rooms, the attention. You open the window and you're in the center of Havana and you're seeing the real Cuba. You're not hidden behind some trees or looking into a direction that all you see is the pretty part of the city, So it's important as a concept that we're going to go through all this trouble and expense and time, that we're creating a ripple effect in the neighborhood. But it's what I call it responsible travel. It's a two-way experience. So for our ideal customer and visitor, they're more adventurous and culturally driven. But you have the comfort of a 5-star hotel. But you walk outside and you see how people live, and you take a rickshaw down the street and you buy some fruit on the corner and you hear some religious ceremony, and you're also in the heart of the city, which for some strange reason hasn't been developed like Vedado and Old Havana. So we're the first, we're pioneering. I think what makes Tribe Caribe different is this mixture of cultural immersion and comfort. Maybe it's a model that can be replicated in other places, and if so, I would always pick a neighborhood that doesn't have a hotel or needs footprint to generate jobs and opportunity, and hopefully other businesses will start from what we're doing here. I don't know, there's over 50 people on salary, that otherwise would probably not have a job. So that's cool. And there is because of the TED Talks and the Jazz Festival and the Black Box and, and all these cultural projects, there's a very open conversation with some of the guests that, people always leave here wanting to help out, and yes, tipping is great. But if they have the interest and desire to be a kind of a longer term supporter on some of these cultural activities, like I want to fix the park, and I feel like if we wait for government or for non-for-profit world or for some foundation or, consulates, everyone's trying, but I feel like the solution is going to come from the people, both the locals and the people that come and stay with us, Like, mark my words, we'll get the park fixed. Hopefully we'll restore the Rumba Palace. We'll be able to produce the Jazz Festival, all of this thanks to the guests that come to the hotels. So that's part of the vision. I'm not trying to push anyone to do it, but people generally want to help, and things can get done fairly liberally here with the right people. So that's my goal.
The idea of being able to be quite nimble in Havana, I guess if government bureaucracy, like it is in lots of places, maybe particularly so in some ways here, or even other very well-meaning bodies, those processes take kind of a long time. Does that feel quite unique to you, kind of about the city, the quality of the city's life that you can...
Yeah, like everything is very complicated here. in many ways because it's the first time that it's being done. And anything that changes the rules is always hard anywhere in the world. But what I love about the energy is that when I produced my first film here in Cuba, and it's like if you can produce a movie in Havana, in Cuba, you can produce a movie anywhere. It's like if you can drive in Lagos, in Nigeria, you can drive anywhere, kind of thing. So starting a business here legally with young people, training, it's kind of a mentorship in so many ways to be in the service industry, because that's one of the things that, because of the revolution, got decayed, because, if you don't own your business, nobody's really motivated to make it as good as possible, So all the private sector has really attracted and trained people to be mindful of the customers and the service and the quality and all these things that are obvious in other parts of the world. And for me, it's exciting. It's an opportunity, and I feel like we built an amazing team. But every single new idea requires so much patience and resilience and convincing. I mean, I'll go back to the TED Talks, for example. I woke up, I think it was 2008, one morning, and I was like, what can I do? I know all these amazing farmers and these amazing ethnologists and artists and leaders of LGBT community. Like, I can't write a song about them, Or I could make a documentary, but that would take like forever. So I was like, TED would be a great kind of internationally recognized way to showcase in a very short amount of time a dozen stories of incredible Cuban people, achievers. But it took 4 years to negotiate between State Department and Cuban government for them to allow me to do it, because it required fundraising in the States and other parts of the world. And in its essence, TED, if you just Google TED, it's an American brand for freedom of ideas, which on the surface, the Cuban government was like, hell no, what is this? But I was, brought the DVDs back then of the talks and showed them that this is a great way to also showcase the values and the education and the talent of the individuals that live here, that Cuba has made in a way. So we found that balance. And the same on the State Department side. It's like, you're going to be in a government theater. It's like, you can't do it. It's like, this is a non-for-profit, completely educational opportunity for the individuals to showcase their singular ideas, which is kind of where both sides agree. So that took 4 years. And we went big. I mean, a national theater, 1,200 people. Then the next year was the other national theater, which was 3,200 people, 20 speakers. But yeah, if I would have lost patience, which I would have totally understand why I would have, anywhere in those 4 years, it would have never happened. So that applies to almost everything here. Finding food, to dealing with power shortage here and there, with like running out of gas, to trying to find guitar strings. It's like endless. You just have to take it with a bit of sense of humor, I guess, and patience.
That was the Grammy-winning music producer, composer, and hotelier Andres Levine in conversation with Tomos Lewis. And you can find out more by heading to tribecaribecayohueso.com. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Mag Rodriguez started his career in the music industry in his senior year at high school in Milwaukee. He was the manager of a classmate with designs on a career in music. When they graduated, they successfully toured the world together for 6 years. Now, Mag's the CEO and founder of a new app called Even. The app allows fans to engage directly with their favourite artists and to pay them fairly for early access to their music. Here is Mag in conversation with Monocle's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs to explain how the app works. He began by describing the current challenges with music streaming services.
There's no one to point a finger at. I think people try to point a finger at, it's the Spotify's problem or it's Apple Music or whatever streaming platform, but that's not really the problem. It's more of a collection of bad decisions were made in the last 2 decades that started with this idea of, all right, let's wave the white flag and give up on trying to sell music and let's just buy into streaming. But it was done with so much friction where it got us to this point now where, just for context, the average artist makes about a third of a penny per stream. And that's a premium stream. That's assuming that the consumer is paying a monthly subscription. If they're not paying a monthly subscription and it's like a freemium model, they're making a sixth of that. So we're talking about fractions of pennies per stream, which is not really sustainable. And a lot of that has to do with, we pay, I don't know what it is in the UK, but maybe 10, 11 pounds a month, and you get access to every song ever created. It doesn't take a genius to realize, like, how is that sustainable?
Yeah.
How is that happening? And, you can only split 11 pounds into so many different directions. And then the platform has to make money as well, right? So hopefully that makes sense. And I think there's really two other problems associated with that. One of them is not only how much they're paid, but when they're paid. So artists are then also paid 2 to 3 months after every streaming period. So if you generate streams today, you won't get that money until December, maybe January of next year. And then the other piece is you, as an artist, won't know who your fans are. There's no data being provided to artists on who their fans are, why they're there, where they came from. So the artist is not only just giving the music away for free, but they're also not getting anything in return in the short term and also in the long term when we think about data as well.
So you can't even know where your fans are in the world?
You could get a high level idea.
But not like this surprising little pocket in this one place or whatever.
I can be the biggest fan of an artist right now, listen to them every single day, and they won't know I exist. And that is one of the core problems that's happening in the space. And that's one of the problems that we've been solving. Just in the last 24 hours, we had this case study that's going viral on the platform. This artist made like $40,000 in like 30 hours on the platform or something crazy. This artist makes $700 a month from streaming. So all of a sudden he just made 40 grand, and it's all of our releases on the platform are pay what you want. So fans can literally just pay whatever they want for an album or a single or EP. He had a fan pay $500, and the average fan is paying $28 for the album. This artist is like mind blown because he's never made this much money from music before, especially so quickly. And we see that every day. Like, I love those case studies when there's an artist who's like at an emerging level that makes a ton of money. What really gets me excited is an artist who's never made $100 before. An artist who hasn't made a single dollar from music.
Yeah.
They come to Even and they make their first $100, $50, $25 in a day. It offers hope for them. And I think that's really what it's about. It's no different than like, if you've ever been to like a creator's market and you buy someone's painting or a bracelet that they made, the smile and the energy that you get from that person, that all of a sudden, like, I worked so hard on this and now I made something. It makes it real for them. And 80% of artists in the world have never had that feeling.
And so maybe you could just kind of break down what Even is and how it works, and how do those kind of case studies come into existence?
Yeah, so the easiest way I describe Even, or the way that I explain it to my mom, is
Always a good tester.
It's always a great one because she has never really known what I do up until now, which is amazing. But think of Even like the movie theater if Spotify was Netflix. So artists are releasing their album anywhere between 7 to 30 days before it's officially released everywhere else. So fans actually have to pay to listen, engage with the content, and then they're rewarded for it. So this can be, you buy the album, you get early access to the content, you get early access to tour tickets. We see artists do all kinds of crazy things. We've seen artists do, you buy my album and you get a follow back on Twitter. 5 fans are going to get meet and greets on my tour. And because the artist is in full control of their campaign and they know who their fans are, they can choose to reward fans wherever they are in the world. If you have a global superstar who's about to go on a world tour, they can say, all right, Sophie in London, you're a fan of me. You bought my album. Yeah. I'm going to be here for a show. Do you want backstage passes, right? And we see that happen every day. And there's also like a shock factor for the artists to finally put names behind who their fans are. Social media has created kind of a facade in many ways of like how big a fan base looks, but nothing beats like the intimacy or the direct connection of like, these are real people on the other side. And it also makes the artists a little bit more conscious of how they have to reward their fans. Streaming can be a little passive, and this kind of has a responsibility. Someone just paid me for something. I have to give them something in return. So that's even the way that we work. Traditionally, we work with record labels, distribution companies, and then with artists directly as well. So you basically, if you're an artist, you go to our website and you say, I want to join Even, and put an application in, and within 7 to 30 days, our team reaches back out and we onboard the artists.
And in terms of the kinds of artists and the kind of music that you have on it, have you found that it kind of works particularly well for certain types of artists, either by genre or what stage they're at in their career or where they are in the world?
Every day, there's a new data point for us, and there's also a new opportunity for us to explore what works. We have users in 190 countries, and we have artists in 110 countries right now. Artists I have never heard of before from places I've never even knew existed that come to Even and had fan bases and are making money from their music. I mean, I've been saying this now more than ever, especially like over the past 90 days, because we have so much data now since our launch, that Even is really for everyone. It's for the artist who's putting out their first album and the superstar who's been releasing music for 10 years. There's always an opportunity and a desire from both fans, but also to artists to engage with each other. And that's what Even's really offering them. One of the biggest things about the product is we really focus on convenience. So this isn't like you're buying an album and getting a zip file with a bunch of MP3 files. Mm-hmm. You're getting an experience that's familiar. So it's a stream. You're streaming the music using Even and the app. And then there's additional community tools, like there's integrated chats in every single release. So fans can talk to each other as they're listening to the music together. The artists can jump into the chat. One of the things that we've been paying a lot of attention to is the relationships that are being built on the platform and how they, translate into the world. Recently, there was one of our high-profile artists launched a release, and then they had a show in the Bay Area, San Francisco area. Fans in the chat were talking together, and they did like a pre-show meetup where they all got together before the show, and it all happened on the app. And it was like incredible to kind of just see it, map it, track it, and then see how it translated over into social media. And then the artist ended up showing up to the meetup.
Oh, amazing.
So I think when I talk to artists in particular and teams, it's like Even isn't here to help you build your fan base. It's here to help you facilitate it, because artists also don't build fan bases. They just facilitate it, right? You build something that attracts people, and then you have to make sure that you can, create a safe space for them to engage with each other. This started off as just like, let's help people make money from music, but now it's turning into a place where people go to connect with each other. The fan-to-fan experience is so important to us now, and it was never something that I thought was going to be a thing. I'm excited to hear more and more stories of how, people met and fell in love through an album that they bought together. And, I think human connection, more than ever, has been a topic of discussion and how people connect, especially post-pandemic world. So I think it's something that we study and pay attention to and build around.
That was Mag Rodriguez, the founder of the app Even, and you can read more about this story in the forthcoming December-January edition of Monocle magazine. And that's all for this episode of The Entrepreneurs. We'll be back at the same time next week. Do look out for that new edition of the Entrepreneurs special issue of Monocle magazine. The Entrepreneurs was produced by Laura Kramer with audio editing by Jack Dewars. Listen again and find out more about the show at monocle.com. That's where you can subscribe to the print edition too. You can always follow us and catch up with the archive wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with the team, email Laura on lrk@monocle.com. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye, and thanks for listening to The Entrepreneurs.